Hello, welcome to day two of the Oddschecker podcast, looking at the Welcome to Yorkshire Ebor Festival from York Racecourse. I'm your host, Danny Archer, and we'll be previewing day two of the meeting alongside Oddschecker's resident tipster, Andy Holding. You can read Andy's tips on the Oddschecker app every single day, and of course, during the Ebor Festival, and also Rory Delargy. So looking ahead to day two, the feature race, another Group 1, is the Yorkshire Oaks. This sees Snowfall, Aidan O'Brien's superstar, bid to maintain her unbeaten record this year. She looks one of the most exciting fillies in training, and hopefully she can confirm that with victory in this event. We've also got the likes of the Lowther Stakes and the interesting listed Galtres Stakes as well. So just looking ahead to day two first, chaps, obviously it looks to be all about Snowfall. What do you kind of make of her so far this season? Is she one of the most exciting horses we've got in training anywhere, Andy?
You'd have to say so, yeah. I mean, her winning margins are extraordinary, aren't they? She obviously has got York form as well, which is great. We touched upon in the first preview. Some of these short price favourites look great, but if they haven't got York form, you're always a little bit sceptical. Well, I am anyway. But a victory over Noon Star stood the test. I mean, 16 lengths demolition job in the Oaks was something to behold. And then she did almost a copy and paste performance again in the Irish Oaks. So yeah, I mean, she's going to be a very, very short price. I don't know what price she will be. A lot depends on what the opposition is. Obviously, now Love's not going to be there. Will Wonderful tonight turn up? And that she's very much ground dependent. There's a couple of older horses that'll certainly fly the flag for the older category in Kirsten Rosing's Albaflor or Alpinista. And Alpinista, of course, chased Home Love in this race last year. She's got a bit of course form, but it's a race really that I don't want to dwell on too much because they're just not real betting races for me, these, unless I can see a bet without the favourite, which we haven't got the markets for at the moment. They're very difficult to have a, I'll say, dogmatic view, but something interesting to say about, really. I don't know what Rory's reviews are.
Well, just on Rory, just on the race, obviously you've had Enable win it 2 times in the last 4 years, Sea of Class and Love. It's probably been one of, in terms of winners, quite a strong Group 1 in recent years.
Yeah, it sits at a very good time in the calendar for those top class fillies who are trying to sort of join together a summer and autumn campaign. I think it could fall a little bit flat otherwise, but for fillies who are good enough to be aimed at the arc, it's a perfect sort of prep for that. Gives trainers time to keep them ticking over afterwards, but it's a nice target to aim at, and it's as a result we've seen some exceptional recent winners. There've been times when it's been a little bit below that standard, but it's usually a pretty strong event for the grade, and we're going to see a couple of very good fillies in it this year as well.
We've got a 7-race card. We kick off at 1:50 with the Bet Lowther Stakes, and the action concludes at 5:20 p.m. Before we get into the action, I'm just going to point you in the direction of the Oddschecker site and app. It's the best place to compare odds, extra places, and offers between the major bookmakers, and you'll also get free daily tips from Andy and many more. But as already alluded to, we kick off with the Bet Lowther Stakes, a Group 2 event over 6 furlongs. Just to let you know, we are recording this on Monday afternoon, so we don't have the final decks yet, and there could be slight changes. But at the moment, the anti-post favourite is Sandrine at 7-4. We've then got Hello You at 13-2. At 7-1 is Zane Claudette. Desert Dreamer 8-1, along with Illustrating. System is 11-1, and it's 12-1 bar. But Sandrine's, it's a really exciting prospect so far, Andy, this year. Unbeaten in 3 starts. She's been a bit of a superstar as well for David Probert, who's enjoying a fantastic season, already recording over 100 winners. What do you make of her chances in the opener on day 2?
Yeah, the right favourite as far as I can see. Certainly backed up on the time figures that we keep. Like I said, 93. There's only been two rolls that we've got doing a 93 this season. Loose Sail being the other one in the July Stakes, and that race has worked out well. And the form of the victory of Sandrine at Newmarket has also gone the same way, with Desert Dreamer, the horse that chased her home, finishing an honourable runner-up to Zane Claudette in the Princess Margaret. So it's hard to knock her, really. She's got a likeable attitude. She switches off well. She gives herself a chance. She's got a deadly turn of foot. Some of her sectional times when she's been in top gear have been breathtaking. The yard shows no signs of relenting. David Probert's riding with a huge amount of confidence. So there's a hell of a lot going for her. I think if you're looking for that are betting the race, and you think, well, what's the one that looks slightly overpriced based on all knowledge that we know? And you'd have to say Desert Dreamer probably falls into that category at 8-1. You know, she got beat by Sandrine at Newmarket, but there was a whole pile of difference in where they challenged on the track, and you know, you could argue that she was a little smidgen unlucky that day. She only just failed on the bob at Ascot when Zane Claudette beat her, but again, she's run another commendable race. She's proven at this level, and I think she's also got the run style that will be suited to York. We talk about horses not running at York, and you're trying to, in your mind, vision horses that might well act on this track that haven't been there before. And I think she does tick that box because she's a hold-up filly that likes to come through late. And when they open up at York at the latter stage and horses have gone too fast, she's the kind of filly that will be doing all her best work at the end, which is the kind of horse I like to be backing here. Oisin Murphy, I think, has been booked as well, which obviously can't be seen as a negative. So I don't think there's an absolute chasm between them. And at 7-4-1, Sandrine, the right favourite, as I said. But 8-1 Desert Dreamer, is she really an 8-1 shot? 4 times the price? It's all about backing the right horses at the right prices for me. Certainly my column's based on that. And I'd rather go each way Desert Dreamer, despite the healthy opinion I've got on Sandrine, because I just don't want to be piling in at 7-4. So that's the way I'd approach the race. Desert Dreamer each way.
And do you feel Desert Dreamer, you know, was only just caught close home by Zane Claudette? If the race is, you know, run more to suit, you feel like she'll reverse the placings with that horse?
Well, that's a different track and a different day, different ground, and as we know, it's not always doesn't go exactly the way you think it will. I mean, I put up Zane Claudette when she won at Ascot. I thought she was overpriced that day based on our numbers at Newmarket. So I've got a healthy amount of respect for Ishmael Mohammed's filly. But like I say, just looking on what they've done this season and the intricacies of this race, I think Desert Dreamer is probably the most likely to run a race time and time again. And like I say, if you back her at each way at 8-1, you'd be disappointed if you did your money there, wouldn't you? I mean, she might come and stick again, finish second or third. But look, you know, you're making a profit. You just keep backing those horses that are wrong price, and the jack's going to come off every now and again.
So as Andy says, Desert Dreamer 8-1 with the likes of Sky Bet, Paddy Power, William Hill, and Betfair. What about yourself, Rory?
The one thing I want to ask anyone who knows better than me, Hermana Estrella, is she? I'm guessing by the prices she's not coming here, or the bookmakers have got it very wrong. She was a really impressive winner on her debut, beating the Queen Mary winner, Quick Susie, and she's been bought by Paul Smith and co since that. She's got lots of entries, including this race, but she's priced up at 14-1 in places for this, which suggests that that she's considered an unlikely runner. Because on the basis of her debut win, you know, to win a Group 3 on debut the way she did, from a filly who then won the Queen Mary, you'd expect her to be a pretty short price. I mean, I've got a view on that race that the runner-up was the best horse on the race on the day. She just raced a little bit too freely in front, and I thought Hermana Estrella got a very good ride from Chris Hay. She was a big price that day and not really fancied. But sitting off the pace and coming through late was probably a benefit to her. But in saying that, given she wasn't fancied, she was a 50-1 shot. She wasn't being knocked about. To go and win that is very impressive. So I find the prices about her rather strange. But if she was an intended runner, I don't think they would have lasted 10 minutes, quite frankly. I think they would have gone, and she's entered in Ireland on Saturday as well. So I think she's more likely to stay at home on that evidence. But she did turn up. She'd be a very interesting runner indeed. Aside from that, I completely agree with Andy. I thought I might have an interesting angle in here. I've liked Desert Dreamer since day one. She beat Nymphadora on debut, despite pulling ridiculously hard and running green. And the only time she hasn't run really well was in very quick ground at Ascot at the Royal Meeting. But then she proved that that was just an off day because she ran a cracker in the Princess Margaret. I thought she should have won that. I think Oisin Murphy made the wrong move at a crucial stage. Not massive criticism of the jockey. It was one of those where the winner got a gap towards the near side, and Oisin Murphy got a gap towards the far side. And I think that made the difference between victory and defeat for him. There was very, very little in it at the line, and she's just been tremendously consistent. I thought she was a little unlucky in the run on her 2 runs in group company in the Empress Stakes, and again I thought in the Duchess of Cambridge to some degree she wasn't in the right part of the track, but she did very good late work both times. And as Andy says, she's the ideal type for an each way bet. The one thing you don't want is a filly with an outstanding chance in a race like this, who's a front runner and then does loads of running, looks like winning for a long way, and then gets swallowed up and finishes 4th. Whereas she's going to be coming from off the pace, and she's done it often enough. She's got lots of experience. She keeps getting better. She can still race a little bit freely, but she's getting better in that regard as well. And a big field for this will suit her really well. And as Andy says, it's hard to see her out of the frame. It's not easy to make a case for her beating Sandrine, but as we said, enough short price favourites get sunk at York for no obvious reason that you'd be happy having an each way bet on Desert Dreamer rather than backing Sandrine. But as I said, if Hermana Estrella rocks up here, it looks a different race with her in it. But I'm assuming she doesn't because of the way we're betting at the moment. But sometimes assumptions can be dangerous.
Okay, interesting. So Hermana Estrella 14-1 with Paddy Power, but as short as 17-2 with Betfred. So make sure that you do shop around on the oddschecker app. Just Rory, a little word on Hello You. Obviously unbeaten in 2 starts on the all weather. Now switches to turf. What do you kind of make of her credentials for this race?
I think if you're going to back her, you're going to get a better price on the day. She was very impressive on her debut and went to Royal Ascot with a big chance in the Albany. She's run very well in both starts since. But she's moved from Rafe Beckett to Dave Loughnane. And I think a few people will be put off by that. It wouldn't put me off at all. Dave Loughnane showed last year that he's a very good trainer of a 2-year-old filly. He had the 1st and 2nd in the Princess Margaret last year. So I think a few people will look at the stable change and decide that it's a bit of a negative. And her price will suffer as a result. I think you might end up getting double figures or better. So if you do like her chances.
He's done amazingly well with Go Bears Go, hasn't he, Rory, as well?
He has, yeah. Well, again, people should be aware of that now. But I still do have that little bit of snobbishness that people will think Rafe Beckett is a better trainer than Dave Loughnane. That's not to knock either of them, but I don't think the stable switch is in any way a negative. But I think that the betting may just push her in that direction, and you end up getting a bigger price now than a bigger price on the day than you do now. So yeah, I wouldn't put you off her. Her form is solid, and she's got decent place claims. But it's just a case of picking the right time to have a bet, and I will suggest that you might just get she's 13-2 second favorite now, isn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think she ends up being 3rd or 4th in, and you get more like 8-9-1 about her.
The one I actually meant to say, also I've got my ammo racing colours wrong, was Thunderlove, who's unbeaten in 2 weather starts. Andy, just a word on that horse and maybe illustrating who runs for Clipper Logistics in this.
Yeah, both of them got some good time figures, particularly Thunderlove. Her first figure when she won, I think it was Kempton first time out, she was incredibly fast. She's only got a rating of 83, which she hasn't had the time to flourish yet, but she does look up to the standard. So yeah, you wouldn't rule her out. And the other one you mentioned, illustrating, bit disappointed at Royal Ascot, but that was, a second run in her life after winning first time out. It's Catterick, fairly low track, and then she went to Goodwood, of course, and won a listed race in fairly dominant fashion. So she's a player. I think with illustrating, she's looked all speed to me, and I'm not necessarily totally convinced that 6 furlongs will be her trip. She might end up just being a precocious 5 furlong sprinter, but time will tell. But yeah, they're players, of course. But that Sandrine form line at HQ based on the time figures is where you want to be looking.
So just to round up, Andy, you're with Desert Dreamer 8-1.
At the prices, yeah, each way. We both discussed that. She just doesn't look an 8-1 shot on all known form.
And Rory, you're in the same camp.
I'm in the same camp. Yeah, she ought to be second favourite on paper. And she's not the type to bomb out. She's almost certain to run her race, and that's good enough.
We've already touched slightly on the feature race today, the Group 1 Yorkshire Oaks, but it does see Snowfall, who's currently priced as the 1-2 favourite. Wonderful tonight is around 6-1 with Ashada at 7-1, Loving Dream at 10-1, Alpinista at 10 to 1 with Alba Flora, then around 12 to 1, but as big as 16 to 1. With then Divinely 33 to 1, Bahraini Store 66 to 1, and Najacond at 100 to 1. Shouldn't probably take too long on this race, chaps. It looks all about Snowfall, but if you were going against her, is there anything that makes appeal at a price for you, Rory?
Yeah, Alpinist is quite interesting if she rocks up here, having won really impressively at Hopper Garden last time. That'll only be 11 days ago, so it's quite a quick turnaround for her from that Grosser Prize Fund Berlin win. But she was really impressive in the end, winning by 2.5 lengths, and that doesn't give her much to find on paper with the favourites. So she'd be obviously the tricky thing here is working out who's going to be declared in the end, and obviously. We've lost Love, and I think it's very unlikely we'll see Wonderful tonight. So the race is liable to cut up considerably, and I don't think there'll be each way betting on the day. Is anyone daft enough to be betting 3 places at the moment, Andy? I'm sure you'd have checked that.
I haven't, but I wouldn't have thought so.
No.
Nowadays, I think bookmakers are more switched on with that. No, everyone's just 2 places.
Yeah, and that's to be honest, that's right. People complain about that a bit and say it's disgraceful that bookmakers aren't giving 3 places when there are this number of runners, but there aren't really that number of runners, and it's daft to be giving money away to shrewdies like Andy Holding when you know there aren't going to be 8 runners in the day. Alpinista is, as I said, she doesn't have a huge amount to find. She ran really well on this race last year, and she's progressed again. I thought she was visually very impressive at the Garden. Obviously, Snowfall's very, very hard to beat, given the wide margins of her wins in 2 classic races. So I don't want to try to pick holes in Snowfall at all, but Alpinista might not be that far behind. And if she's a backable price, I would consider her, but I'm not putting her up as a likely winner at this stage. As I said, we'll see who's declared and what kind of prices they bet on the day.
Okay, interesting thoughts though. Alpinista short as 9 to 1 with Sky Bet, but as big as 12 to 1 currently with Betfred. Andy, what about the Ribblesdale form? You've got the winner Loving Dream in at 10 to 1, but as big as 12s, and then Ashada, who was second in that race, 5 to 1 with Sky Bet, but as big as 7 to 1 with the likes of Betway, Betfair, and Bet365. Yeah,
I mean, Loving Dream took advantage of arguably a substandard Ribblesdale. Like I say, I don't want to be too detrimental, but obviously Snowfall didn't run, and we got a few refugees further down the field who represented the Epsom form line, including Dubai Fountain. It's just okay form, isn't it? It's probably as it is Group 2 standard, but this is a genuine Group 1. Whether Loving Dream is good enough to beat Snowfall, I'd have my doubts. Look, I think at the price of the moment, I think Snowfall's 2-1. I think she'll be probably close to 2 to 7 on the day. Mm-hmm. Once we know that Wonderful Tonight and Love are out, once the bookmakers kind of like accept that and come to terms with that, that's going to be the likely situation if we're looking at good ground. And of course, the bet at the moment, if you could have been in a wonderful scenario of betting this, if this was Cheltenham, for instance, they'd be betting without the favourite. There'd be a few markets without the favourite now, but because it's not as high profile as a Cheltenham Festival, bookmakers are not going to give you a bet now without the favourite. But if they were in a fantasy land, it'd be Alpinista, because she was ridden with a view to finishing second in this race last year to Love, and she picked up the pieces. And I think they're more than likely to run her than Alba Flora, because Alba Flora needs cutting the ground. They might as well roll the dice again, and I think she'll be ridden very much with a view to finishing second against the Snowfall. And if they can get better, Snowfall bombs out by some miracle, then they could even get the gold medal. But I think this will be a 5-runner race. I can't see any more than 5 horses running in it. So yeah, if you are of a mind to be a sort of like you've got plenty of backbone, and you're a buyer of money at 2-1. I think now's the time to step in and take the 2-1, because you won't get that on the day.
I've changed my mind. I haven't changed my mind on this, but I've changed my mind about waiting for decks. Actually, looking at the betting, even with 2 places, Alpinista at 12 to 1. Yeah, she's not going to be 12 to 1 on the day. Luke Morris is dropped up on her, less significant when the owners get 2 in the race, but she'd be using different jockeys anyway. But unless the weather changes dramatically, you can work out who's not going to run in this race, and that suggests that Alpinista is, as long as she comes through her last piece of work okay. That's all it'll come down to. She's very happy on the ground. So 12, I mean, there's not much 12 to 1 around, but there's 10 to 1 in about 4 or 5 places, and that will actually be value. So there's a vague chance that she comes out because her trainer's not happy with her so quickly after her last run, but it looks likely that she runs. A couple of her in the market won't run, and I thought that just looking at the betting, Ishada's 5 to 1. And Alpinista is 12. That's just massively wrong.
Yeah.
Ishada might improve a chunk, but she needs to. As Andy was keen not to be rude about the Ribblesdale form, but you can be reasonably rude about it. It wasn't a good race. And Alpinistas definitely should be a shorter price than Ishada, unless I'm missing something about a statement about her maybe not running. The 10 to 1, 12 to 1 is far too big in terms of the place terms, even with only 2 places available. Because Andy says you're going to get 5 runners, and a shorter price on the day about her. So she actually does make appeal as an each way bet now.
Maybe I would be so bold, Dan, to offer up an each way double.
Okay.
We could do Salukan on day 1 at 4 to 1 or 9 to 2 in around that mark with Alpinista currently at 12 to 1, and it's a 6 to 1 double, unless my maths are wrong. 12 to 1 quarterly odds, and 4 to 1 50 odds. 6 to 1 double. There you go.
There we go. Andy Holding with a little.
You haven't even got to back a win, and you're back to 6 to 1. You've got a 6 to 1 draw.
Yeah. So 12 to 1, as the guys already said with Betfred, but Alpinista also available at 10 to 1 with Bet365, Paddy Power, William Hill, Betfair, and also Betway. Just a quick word on Snowfall to wrap it up. Obviously, Love used this race as a potential stepping stone for the Arc last year before the ground went against her. Do you see this kind of being a similar route with Snowfall here, going for this race and then straight onto the Arc?
It looks to be that way, doesn't it, Rory? Yeah, I mean, St Mark's Basilica, the other big classic hope this season for Aidan O'Brien. Looks better at a mile and a quarter. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. He's older horses now, but I can't believe that she won't go any other way than the Octa Triumph. But what a race the Octa Triumph is working out to be. Maybe Hurricane Lane, maybe Adir, Wonderful Tonight, Tanawa. It looks, unless I missed something out there, I might have done, but it looks like being a spectacular race.
And crucially, Rory, she'll get the fillies allowance as well as a 3-year-old.
The 3-year-old fillies. Again, you look through the history of the race; they do tremendously well. If they are genuinely top class. In an ideal world, you're looking for a 3-year-old filly who's just coming to her peak in the autumn, whereas of course Snowfall has been very much hitting the target midsummer. So that's a marginal question mark. But otherwise, she ticks all the boxes. And as Andy was saying, St Mark's Basilica. A has had this setback, and B, he'd be the first horse in a million years not to be proven at a mile and a half to win an Arc. Just going back through the history of the race is pretty much unknown for a horse who's not proven Group 1 horse over a mile and a half to step up in trip for the race. So I'd have been negative about him anyway, even more so after having a setback now. And she seems by far the Ballydoyle #1 string for the race. So yeah, it seems all systems go for her.
So Snowfall 2 to 1 on currently to win the Yorkshire Oaks on Thursday for Aidan O'Brien. Then moving on across the rest of the card on day 2, we'll go to the 3 o'clock, which is one of the big competitive handicaps today, the £100,000 Clipper Logistics handicap over just around 7 furlongs. Obviously, we haven't got the full deck to this yet, but the current market on oddschecker, you've got the Trinidad and May Danny, along with Migration and Star of Orion, 10 to 1 co-favourites of 4. Astro King is at 12 to 1. Amethyst, Magical Morning, Montatham and Orban all at 14 to 1, with Barshir, Escobar, Fame and Acclaim, King Ottica and Pythagoras 16 to 1 and 20 to 1 bar. Obviously, it's early days, no declared runners yet, but is there anything at the moment, guys, that's sticking out? Rory, start with you first.
Well, the obvious one in the Clipper Logistics is David Minucier's Migration, who've been off the track for the best part of 2 years. Very eye-catching run first time out at Salisbury before winning really well at Goodwood, and he's clearly ahead of his mark. And this being an early closer, he's got a penalty for that. he'd have a big chance. But I don't think he'll run on fast ground.
Mm-hmm.
I think his trainer thinks he'd be as effective back at a mile. Not entirely sure about that. I think the mile and a quarter suits him really well. But he said because he's had an injury, he didn't want to run him on quick ground. He was due to run at Newmarket at the July meeting, and he was pulled out there because of the quickish ground. So unless it rains, I think migration might be taken out of that. So just be wary of backing him anti-post if you're inclined to do that at the moment. I'm going to put one up at a bigger price. I think he might be an even bigger price on the day than he is currently. There's a horse I've mentioned before here. I mentioned him for the if I can find him. I hope he's still in the race. I think he's far enough down. Pythagoras is a horse that I like, that we haven't quite seen the best of yet. The argument I made for him going into the Dante, I thought he might sneak into the frame in the Dante at a biggish price, was that I don't think he wants to go right-handed. Although he's run right-handed more often than he's run left-handed. But he looked up around the bends twice last year at Ripon and at Beverley. And I thought, although he won both of those races, I think he won despite going right-handed. And again, he hasn't run badly in his last couple of starts, but he hasn't progressed. Whereas I think his best effort on paper is his run in the Dante. And unfortunately, having made the running on his reappearance at Epsom, I thought he'd raced reasonably handy in the Dante, which ended up being a slightly odd race in the way the leader was allowed to go clear and the pack did their own thing. He finished sixth in the end, beaten 6 lengths. I think he's value for that, and that's a bit of a standout on his card. And I think most people will think, well, he hasn't really progressed in 2 runs since that. Maybe he's flattered, as a lot of horses can be, in finishing reasonably close up in group races. But I think he's worth persevering with going left-handed. I'd want a biggish price about him because, my theory isn't exactly copper bottomed. But if you take the view, he was too keen at Epsom. They didn't really intend to make the running with him, I think, in the blue ribbon trial. But he just happened to bounce out and get to the front, and he raced a bit too freely that day. But he went well for a long way. He shaped well before fading and wasn't given a hard time. As I said, he stepped up when sixth in the Dante, while still giving the impression that maybe he could have finished closer if he didn't come from so far back in the field. And 2 runs since have been respectable right-handed. But as I said, because my view is that he actually wants to go left-handed rather than right, I will give him a chance to actually improve here. Hopefully he sneaks in. He's number 28 on the list. But I think we'll get 2 or 3 non-runners, and I'm hoping he'll sneak in right at the bottom of the weights. If not, I'm waiting for another opportunity for him.
Paul Hannigan already dropped up, and as Rory says, 16-1 currently at the moment across the board for Pythagoras in the Clipper Logistics Handicap. What about yourself, Andy?
Yeah, it's an interesting angle there with Rory Pythagoras. He didn't run too badly in the Dante at all. So he's got course form. So that's a plus. And the other horse that's got huge course form for me, and he's improving, is La Trinidad. He clocked a big number when he won here in July, beating a good field. And a lot of the horses out of that race have either gone on to win or run well subsequently in big handicap. So I'm fairly confident that form line is going to hold up. He's run here a numerous amount of occasions, but he just seems to be improving. Like, he had a fair year as a 3-year-old, but seems to have come of age of late, following his run beyond Kiddenrun early on in the season, similar race to this. And connections have gone out of the way to book Oisin Murphy as well already. They've got him in the can. So that's a signal of intent if ever there was one for La Trinidad. So he'd be the one I'd be concentrating on, albeit not, fantastic price, like 10-1 the field, and he's one of the favourites, but he's got solid form.
La Trinidad 10-1 with the likes of Bet365, Sky Bet, Unibet, and also Betfred. Just a couple of others to mention, given we've got a few jockeys booked up. Frankie Dettori's on Magical Morning, Ryan Moore on Astro King, and also the joint top weight by the looks of things, Jim Crowley on May Danny and Ben Curtis on Marie's Diamond. Just a word on any of them chaps, maybe you first, Rory, any of those of interest out of those?
I think this is a very tight handicap, and I'd be inclined to look at it again when I see decks and stalls positions here and get an idea of what the pace is going to be. Those you've mentioned all have solid enough claims on paper. None of them are standouts to me as such. As Andy says, it's a 10-1 the field race, and it should be. It's that competitive. So I'm looking to get a little bit of an angle here. I'm not I'm not ruling anything out by going with my selection, but I'd be a bit surprised if Marie's Diamond won. I'll say that. Marie's Diamond has been a little bit disappointing. You could argue dropping into Handicap Company might see an improvement there, and Marie's Diamond has got the size and the scope to carry a big weight, but that'll be a little bit of a surprise. Otherwise, those that you picked out are obvious enough sorts who, if they get the right sort of draw and the right kind of breaks in the race, could be competitive. But I'll stick with what I have at the moment, and then reassess the race based on final decks and stalls positions, and then maybe look for a saver there as well.
Just finally on this race, Andy, we've also got Montatham in it, who won the race last year. He was well beaten in Group 2 company last time out. What do you make of his chances off a mark of 107, given he it's off 104 last year?
Yeah, I don't mind having a look at horses that have been running in group races, dropping back into handicaps. Carhale, who won the Bunbury Cup, was a classic point in case, wasn't he? I think he raced off 109 that day and he bolted up. So you often find that horses that you need a group horse to win these races nowadays, whether you've got an established horse in group races or one coming through the ranks. He's a horse I like. He's got a good cruising speed. He's won at York, which you pointed out. He didn't get suited by the run of the race here last time out, which you could, give him a pass for. I just think there's others probably arriving here in slightly better shape than he is this time around, whereas last year he came in on a crest of a wave. So, yeah, I'd have to have a huge set of rose tinted glasses with him to back him this year, even though I did back him last year, but not this time around.
The other interesting thing is that Jim Crowley is already chopped up, as far as I can see, on Cadder, which maybe suggests that Montatham is an unlikely runner. He's in the Celebration Mile in a week or so's time at Goodwood, so that might be the plan. Or then again, he's been kept in there, and maybe Jim will have a rethink. Just because you see these jockey bookings at the entry stage, it doesn't mean that they're absolutely set in stone.
So just to round up, Rory's with Pythagoras at 16-1, and we've also got Andy with La Trinidad for Roger Fell, who is around the 10-1 mark. Just looking across the rest of the racing, one of the most interesting races, I guess, on paper is the 4:45 over a mile and 4 furlongs. That's the British EBF and Sir Henry Cecil Galtres Stakes. It's a listed event. It's been won in recent years by the likes of Latidar and Searcher of Songs. Dermot Weld could potentially be represented here. He's got Zawara among the entries, and also Amma Grace. Just looking at the race in general, chaps, maybe start with you, Andy. Is there anything that's caught your eye since the entries have come out?
Yeah, there's a horse of John Gosden's in this. It's a race that, excuse me, John has done quite well in recent times. As you mentioned, Latidar won it 3 years ago. He's got a lightly raced filly called Pennymore, who bumped into a useful colt of Sir Michael Stout's at Pontefract on the turf early on in the season. And then she had a bit of a break and then came back at Kempton the other night and absolutely bolted. She won by 9.5 lengths, but the time figure was, as you'd imagine, with a horse winning 9.5 lengths, was exceptionally good. And it just seems to me that she might have just come of age in a very short space of time. I think the 1.5 miles as well suited at Kempton, whereas the 1.25 miles probably not so much at Pontefract. And it'd be interesting if he ends up running her. And with Frankie Dettori already booked to ride, I would tend to be leaning towards that way with her. So, yeah, no prices at time of recording, but I'd imagine she'd be one of the ones prominent in the market come Thursday morning.
Frankie Dettori and the Godolphin Blue for John and Thady Gosden. What about yourself, Rory?
Yeah, this used to be a race to back Luca Kamani's in back in the day. And interestingly, he always had a type for this. He'd always have a late developer who wouldn't have run in listed or group company before, maybe unraced at 2, and just beginning to peak. And in that regard, Pennymore is the one who actually very much fits that category, having only made her debut in June. As Andy said, it was a big improvement. I mean, she was an odds-on favourite, but she wasn't expected to win quite as easily as she did at Kempton. And there's no doubt she took her form up to a new level in that win. And yes, she does very much fit the bill of a filly who's improving rapidly, which I think you can end up throwing a lot of money at highly rated fillies and mares in this race and come unstuck. Cabaletta is the top rated on the adjusted time form figures, and I wouldn't be backing her with stolen money. Amma Grace, again, she comes out well enough at the weights, but she seems to have stalled a little bit as well. So I'm looking for a filly who's improving. The two that I would consider, as Andy's already said, so with Penny Moore. I'd also go back to Tiona, who had a big reputation earlier in the year. She came here and she started second favourite. In fact, I think she was the morning favourite for the Musadora behind Snowfall. And she was just undone by greenness that day. She was making her turf debut. She'd been really impressive on the all-weather at Newcastle before that, but she had an awful lot to learn. They decided to stick. I thought going to Epsom was a terrible idea after that, but they went to Epsom with her, and she ran no race in the Oaks wearing a hood. I'd have been inclined after York, because that was, she got a little bit upset that day. The race wasn't run to suit her. I'd have written Epsom off and given her a little bit of a break and brought her back, but at least they've given her a break after Epsom. Hopefully that's done the job. She's been off for 10 or 11 weeks since that run. She definitely retains plenty of upside, as long as she hasn't had her brains blown by that experience. She had that kind of experience here at York in the Musadora, and then to go to Epsom after that can affect a filly's confidence and their temperament. So I'd be a little concerned about that. But she's a filly who looked to have the world at her feet before she ran on the Musadora. The fact that she was fancied to beat Snowfall by plenty of good judges tells you a lot about her, and it's just a case of whether they can rescue her season now.
That's interesting. So I was going to actually ask you about Tiona. So that's quite interesting you brought her up. David Egan already booked up to ride in a 76-day layoff, as Rory said she should. Obviously, clearly come on for having that break after the Oaks. Just one I was going to ask you quickly about, Andy, is Portfolio. Sir Michael Stout last won this in 2016 with Aberdeen. Portfolio represents Her Majesty the Queen, and looks like Ryan Moore's going to ride. Just a word on her.
Yeah, that race at Newmarket, when she was third behind Saviour Forest, was a very good race on the time figures. The winner of Roger Varian's was quite highly touted early on in the season. I think she ran in the Linkfield Oaks and got bogged down on the ground, if my mind isn't playing tricks on me. But yeah, I mean, she's a fast-growing horse that stays really well, seems to be improving. Yeah, couldn't put you off her if you got a real strong view with her.
So just to round up on the race itself, Rory looks like he's with Tiona for Roger Varian, I'm guessing, and Andy, you're with Penny Moore.
Penny Moore, yeah, I like her profile, yeah.
Great. And then just moving on to the rest of the card, we've got, before the listed Yorkshire Stakes at 4:10, we've got the EBF Stallions Nursery Handicap. Lots of competitive runners look to be in that when the final decks come out. And then in the 5:20, we've also got the Fillies Handicap over 7 furlongs. Anything in either of those two races that stands out for you, Rory, at the minute?
I'm not sure she gets in the race, but Celestial Queen's quite interesting in the finale. They're going to go fast here, I would have thought. A Highfield Princess has shown that she's a high class filly who can go fast, and I think the others will not want to let her go. She's up to a mark of 104 now, which will make things tough for her. But I think that pretty much guarantees you're going to have a very strong pace here. And if we do have a very strong pace, then it will suit the hold-up horses. And I think Celestial Queen's interesting. She's bred to be quite useful, but it took her a while for the penny to drop. But she was running off a mark of 59 when she won a red card early in the season. But she's proven herself to be better than that since, despite actually pulling up at Leicester. She ran her best race at Thirsk last time out when winning narrowly, but she looked like she should have won that by a wide margin. She is a lot higher in the weights, which makes it tough for her. She should be out of the handicap here unless something at the top comes out. And if for example, Highfield Princess didn't run in the end, that would massively help her chances of A, getting in the race, and B, having a more realistic weight. But I can see her running well, despite the fact that that she's I think she's 12 pounds wrong. So on paper, she looks like a massive outsider, but I think she's improving rapidly at this stage of the season. And if she does sneak into the weights and gets a run, I can see her run above herself. Although the owners also have improvised in the race, so whether they want to go double-handed or not, I don't know. But as I said, if by some chance she rocks up in that race, she's capable of outrunning what should be fairly big odds.
Okay, so Celestial Queen in the finale if she gets in for Rory. What about you, Andy? Anything in either the 410 or the 520?
I'm a big fan of Affable, a horse trained over in Ireland by Ken Condon. Ken's horses are in fantastic form at the moment, as we know. And she won very easily at Cork the other day. Very good time figure. She came there cruising at the furlong pole and won with any mount in hand. 7 furlongs is definitely a trip. They actually ran over 5 furlongs the time before behind a horse called Provocateurs, which seemed bizarre given her overall profile was very much suggesting that she went beyond 6 furlongs. But she's got a good cruising speed. I think she's quite well handicapped off 85. And in the nursery, I've been waiting for a horse to run for quite a while called KO Shark, who clocked a big number when winning at Haydock when we last saw him 83 days ago. But he ran on debut behind Alma over 5 furlongs at Goodwood in that very good time figure race. He had no chance of living with obviously Richard Hannon's also who's proven himself at group level over 5 furlongs. But yeah, stepping up to 7 furlongs, he very much came into his own last time out. I'm not sure why he's been off since, but Hollydale's been booked by the looks of it. So yeah, KO Shark would be of a degree of interest, providing he gets a good draw come Thursday.
Okay, fascinating. KO Shark in the 410 and back in the 520. It's Affable for Andy. So just to round up, chaps, Rory, start with you. Your main fancy on Thursday at York?
I think I've talked myself round into backing Alpinista each way in the Yorkshire Oaks.
Alpinista
double figures. Yep.
at the moment. Okay, so make sure if you're going to back Alpinista, you get a price very quickly. And what about yourself, Andy?
Yeah, I thought Rory was going to go down the old Pythagoras route there, to be honest, but he's threw a curveball. Yeah, with the prices, I'll be more than happy to say Desert Dreamer. We could actually stick that in the each-way multiples, couldn't we?
Yeah.
So should we go in? Should we have an each-way treble then? Desert Dream. Yeah, I'll work that out. What was it? So we've got Lucan on day 1, Alpinista, and we're saying Desert Dreamers. There you go, 18 to 1.
18 to 1 treble.
18 to 1.
Lovely. Let's hope it does better than our Royal Ascot each way double, which was the best value ever. And sadly came unstuck about half an hour before the race.
Well, we live in our bay, Rory. Yeah, we wipe the slate clean. Yeah, we've got short memories in this game.
So Desert Dreamer 8 to 1 in the opener.
Desert Dreamer 8 to 1. Yeah.
Bet Lowther Stakes. Thanks again to Rory and Andy for their time. We'll be back later on in the week previewing day 3 and day 4 of the Welcome to Yorkshire Ebor Festival. Good luck with your bets. Remember to keep checking the odds checker out for the best prices and also Andy's tips. And hopefully you can back a few winners on the Naves Mile on Wednesday and Thursday.